All right, we're at the shop today, and I haven't done really any work to this vehicle since I bought it. I bought it brand new. This is a Mazda 3 Grand Touring, and it's time for some brakes. I'm at about 52,000 miles, and kind of started hearing noises, got a little bit of vibration. I travel up and down a big mountain, so it's probably time for some brakes. But I'm going to show you the tools. I'm going to show you how I take this off, and more importantly, I've run into a couple issues, especially with like filters and etc. It's always best to figure out what you need, take it to the auto store, and make sure you're getting what you actually need to complete the project. So we're actually going to take this off and see what we need. I'm guessing rotors and pads, but we'll get this off and determine what we need before we go purchase anything. Okay, so here's the basics of what I'm going to use. I got some brake cleaner. Got my trusty Cobalt tool set. I love this thing. I've had it for years. I don't even think they make this particular one anymore, but it's got hex and Torx and all this plethora of sockets. As you can see, I've not missing anything, so that's a testament to the tool storage. It does a really good job. So the Cobalt impacts. And something new, I don't use this very much because I have air in the shop, but because I'm shooting video, I'm going to try this so I don't have to have the air compressor running and see if that kind of improves things. My particular Mazda doesn't have any like wheel safety, or not safety, but wheel locks, just to make it more difficult to get the tire off. If somebody wants to steal your rims, there's a plethora of stuff to get one of the security nuts off. I don't think that's going to stop them. So if you have one and you still have the original lug nut, I would recommend just putting on the regular lug nuts. At least where I live, tire theft is not very prevalent. Just reaching in and feeling in here on the rotor, I mean, it's not bad, but I mean, there's definitely a streak or two in it. Probably enough streaking in it where I'll want to replace the rotor regardless of what we find. But let's get this off. Okay, we got the tire off. One thing I'll mention on these tires, these are just a cheap set that I picked up somewhere, and decent wear pattern, a little bit weird shape to the tire. I can't say that I recommend these. These are SA07s, and they're made by, let's see, whoever that is, Westlake. Not a great tire, makes a lot of noise. Even when I bought them new, they were fairly noisy. Now they're super noisy. So I'll be going hopefully next week and getting some new tires. Stopped by the tire shop this morning. They didn't have this particular size in stock. Apparently this must be a weird size. 215s, I think they had 225s in this series tire. Anyway, over here, as you can see, it's kind of bumpy there. The actual pad, I don't know how well that's going to come through. It looks like the pad, there's quite a bit of pad still left, but I definitely got some, kind of brake shudder when you're going down a mountain, especially if you don't apply the brakes real hard. Maybe some of you guys that have more experience with brakes be able to comment down below. But basically, you end up with like a little bit of wheel shake and a little bit of shakiness when you're lightly pressing the tire, especially going downhill in the mountains. Flat ground, it really doesn't seem to affect. So I'm assuming either this rotor's warped or something else has happened. I don't know why this is happening. There's at least a couple thousandths bump there in that rotor. Basically right there and right there. So there's a hump and then two grooves cutting the rotor. And just feeling on the other side, it feels very similar. So yeah, I think we'll be doing a rotor swap on this just to see if that corrects the problem. But overall, this is for 52,000 miles. There's not, there's a little bit of brake dust, not much. So I've took really, decent care of this, keeping it clean. Up underneath is, it looks not worse than new, I guess. Anyway, let's get this caliper off and we'll pull the rotor off and actually take this rotor to the auto parts store to make sure we get the right one. Hopefully they have it. But basically, you pull these bolts out, and I'm hoping this works like every other brake caliper out there. This will lift away, and you don't want to leave it hanging by the hose here. We'll either strap it up, or I'll get a block and set it on it while we get the rotor off. Okay, so we've got it off. Caliper holder. Did something with the socket. Let's see, it's gonna be a 17 millimeter, so that's held on. This bracket here is held on with a 17 millimeter. I can definitely see the groove now. Pads, you know, they're not wore to like the pad material. Obviously there's appears to be, you know, some pad left, but this must be right at the wear point, because what's hitting the rotor is the spring. On mine it's the lower spring. This edge right here is hitting the rotor. I haven't googled it yet. What I'm assuming is eventually that pad gets in there, and it may have just caught it, and it pulls that spring in, and I don't know if that's the wear indicator or what, but it's definitely come in contact with the rotor for a while, and kind of gouged it out a little bit there. So I'm going to pull this out right here. One thing to check on these is usually when I take them off, you know, usually I have a Loctite or something on them, but I always check and see what's there. Try to put back what's there. But hopefully the new brake pads will come with a new spring. Not that, you know, these aren't destroyed, but because that one's been rubbing, and this one's a little warped from removal. That seems to be what's been actually rubbing against the rotor. This, there's not a lot left here in the slot in the middle, so I'm assuming these are right at their limit. This is just a backing plate, and there's another one here. Just a note if you run into it, this was out on the back side. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off, and the rotor's already loose, so it's gonna come off real easy. I'm gonna pull this caliper holder off and take this auto parts store and see what we can come up with. See if we can get a set of brake pads that come with springs and get a new rotor. Okay, so we got it off, 2 bolts. Here's the rotor. I'm gonna run to the auto parts store, see if they've got that stuff. Okay, just got back from the auto parts. They had our brake pads with springs and some painted rotors. So I'll unbox this, and we'll get this rotor swapped out, see what it looks like. Okay, so I've got the torque wrench set at 75. Really the first time I've ever used this particular torque wrench. I really like it. My Cobalt, the lock back here got stripped. It was one of the pull downs, and it got stripped. I don't remember who got this for me, but somebody got this for me for Christmas. It's a Tecton 1/2 inch. The only issue that I've had, and this is car specific, is you get on the bolt, and as you can see, you don't have a lot of room. I was able to get it by going to the front of the car and pulling up, and getting about 2 ratchet motions to get that bolt torqued down. But anyway, really like this. I do like the lock mechanism on this much better than the one I had. It seems to hold better. Anyways, but we've got this torqued down, and now it's time to put on the springs and get our pads on, and then we'll work on this caliper. Okay, just one trick that I wanted to mention. One, the rear pad, or the inward facing pad this way, on the back side, let me make that clear. So it would be this pad has the wear spring, which on this one it never really touched, so I'm not really sure why. I was real careful when I installed this spring to make sure it was lined up well, and it was on the edge of the caliper. I'm not really sure why it was scraping against the rotor. But just one real quick trick, I may not be able to do this one-handed, but the easiest way to get these pads in, you kind of want to put them in at an angle, and you want to push on this spring just a little bit, and you want this to clear that right there. There we go. So you can see it's in now, and you can squeeze these together, and you get a real firm placement. But it's a little tricky getting in there. If you don't know to kind of press on that a little bit and put them in at an angle, it's really hard to get the pads in. But like I said, the wear thing goes on the back, the flat face goes on the front. That's what was in there. These are the original Mazda pads, and they look identical to the ones I have now. And you can kind of, if you get kind of confused, there'll be a backing plate. It's the only one that has the 2 pins. This is the original Mazda pad, and it has the wear spring. And as you can see, it never reached the wear spring, so kind of weird that it was actually this spring, the edge of this spring was actually rubbing against this. So as I put this together, I'm going to be really mindful when I turn the tire to make sure that I still don't have a problem and ruin these new rotors. Okay, so we've got the caliper pushed back in. If you're looking for one of these, I have a generic tool, but I bought this, I don't know, last year. Done a couple of brakes with it. I really like this set, the little tongs for various brake sizes, but on this particular one, you want to pick tongs that just fit inside the caliper hole, which is the stock one. The way this one's designed, it has a magnet with tongs that stick out, and then you can just pop this on. You can see the little magnets there. So basically this just pops on and it'll hold, and you can swap out plates really quick depending on your caliper size, how big it is. This works really well. My old cheaper tool, this was kind of bent up, etc., and that's why I got this set, and it's just a lot easier to use. Basically, one of the confusing things is, one, how this works. This is the default plate. It's got 2 prongs that stick out that fit all of the other. You can notice the 2 holes are all the same size, so basically that fits on this size press. The other confusing thing is to get this on this little plate. This has a ridge and there's a plate. You put it on this end, and the way you do it is you kind of slip it over this and then push. And as you can see, I've used it quite a bit. And you basically just slide that up, and then that plate will slide on without any issues. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this caliper on, and we'll keep moving on. Okay, we got the tire back on, and I just wanted to kind of show you one thing to check always when you're doing brakes is anything touching. And as you can see, we don't have any squeaking or anything impeding this. Another thing I'm going to do is, as I roll it, I'm going to I did already brake clean the rotor. I'm going to do it one more time now that I really can't touch that rotor, and just try to get everything cleaned off. And I'm not going to video the other side. I'm going to do that real quick and kind of just pull it out of the shop, make sure the brakes still work, and we'll call it a day. But really simple project. Kind of just the outlay of tools you will need. I used an adjustable wrench for the little stem that sticks out that squeezes the rail that the brake caliper actually rides on. There's a back nut to that. On the upper one I didn't really need it, but on the lower one I had to capture it with a wrench to get it torqued down to spec. Again, that's 75 on the really big bolt that holds the brake caliper bracket, 21 foot-pounds for these bolts on the rail. Overall, not a bad job. One thing that'll help you out is this. I'll put links to basically everything that I know that I got off Amazon down below. I picked these up at AutoZone, or not AutoZone, Advanced Auto, sorry. Really quick to get in and out of there. I did get the painted rotors. If you live in a salty area, try to get painted rotors. It really does help, especially on the edge of this rotor. It won't get all rusty and salty. A lot of that debris ends up down in your brake pad, and this kind of prevents some of that, and it's only a couple bucks more to get the painted rotors. But let me get the other side done, and we'll check and see if the brakes work. Okay, we got both sides changed out. Now time for the true test. see if the brakes work a little better. And right now I've rotated both tires. The grinding that was there, which I'm sure was that spring, is now gone. At this point, I'm not even convinced that the pads were wore, but the damage on the passenger side was from the spring on that rotor, and I'm sure that the rotors were warped as well. It's probably where the surgeon was from. So went ahead and got the parts and went ahead and just changed everything out and made sure that there was no clearance issues. But I want to back this out and take it for a quick test drive and see how it pans out. All right, I've got the lawnmower back in after the disc brake job on the old Mazda, and that did fix the problem. No more shaky shimmy, no more grinding noise. I'm assuming rotors were warped and that spring was contacting the rotor, which is making the noise. I don't think that was the spring. It's supposed to be touching the rotor. There's another spring on that back pad like I mentioned, but everything works good. Anyways, thanks for watching, and please subscribe, please like, and we'll see you on the next one.